Con from the Discord has a question about Valve and their hiring practices. So let's dig into that. His question is, I think you've said before you never had to write a resume and your interview at Valve was fairly informal. What's your interview process like at your company? And did you also take part in the giving interviews at Valve? All right, so here I can talk about this. I think Valve's talked about this, so I can talk about this. So first, for me, 1991, I had to write a resume where you have to tell the story, and you're like, I took out the trash. And instead you tell the story about how like you clean the environment for 500,000 BTUs, or I don't know, like, right, you just make up stuff. And I was like, this is stupid. I never want to do this again. So I didn't. So actually when Gabe reached out to Eric and I and said, hey, do you want to come work at Valve? And we said, hey, could you tell us a little bit more? And he's like, no, come on out. And we came out, they asked us when we first arrived if we had resumes. And I said, no, suckers. We went from there. So yeah, our interview process was not the normal interview process. Our interview process was a couple of days of just kind of hanging out. And it was, Gabe had identified that they wanted to be a little bit more ambitious about some storytelling stuff and kind of also go into linear media a little bit. The linear media output of that is if you've seen the shorts or the comics. That's kind of stuff. And so with that, he was looking for additional people. And he was willing to kind of make a wild card hire by fiat. Some people later came up to me and said, hey, I thought you were a bad hire. Doug Lombardi, who I'm friends with, came up to me and said, hey, I thought you were a bad hire, but actually this worked out pretty well. So that's fair. And also, I appreciate when somebody can do that and say that to you. So yeah, we were a weird hire. We just hung out, we played, we story tested, and we tried things together, and we tried to tell stories, and we just made jokes together, and like we hung out all the time. And then I think I've said before is then I was playing unreleased Half-Life 2 and I got stuck while Gabe was watching me, and that was pretty embarrassing. Thought we wouldn't get hired. But yeah, no, we got hired. And the weird thing then at Valve is spent the next 6 months pretty sure we were gonna get fired. And Eric famously got really sick, and they took care of him, and we just realized we're going to be working here forever if they take care of our friend like that. I guess Eric just is self-centered. But either way, that's what happened. And, for Valve, the hiring process is they put the guard up to bring you in normally really high. And actually hanging out with Gabe for 3 days is a pretty hard hiring process. I was gonna say I love the man, but that was intense. That was an intense 3 days, right? But they put this guard up and they make it hard to get hired because once they let you in, like they let us over the gate, we're free to just go crazy for a while, right? And so you can't hire poorly because that'll destroy this system. And the whole time I was there, 12 years, I can only remember really one or two people that just clearly didn't fit once they got hired, and they were quickly kind of said goodbye to. And it was just really obvious, but it's because that wall's so high. And so with that, the hiring process, and I know other companies do this as well, similar, is you talk about who's going to get hired, and you have a group of people who are going to go do it. And what it is like, let's say 10 a.m. person shows up, they get interviewed with the first two people. You already know what those two people are going to talk about. Maybe they're going to talk about, have them do some coding on the board, or maybe they're going to do a design test or something. Like test meaning just like an exercise with people back and forth. It's a lot about communication. And so you do that, and then those two people meet with the next two people. And the next two people already have something on the schedule that they're going to do, but they're going to be like, hey, what should we push on? What's the thing we don't know about? And then those four people go to the next one, and they like just keep leapfrogging, right? And you keep growing. And I was often the guy who took people to lunch. I'm telling you, I love Valve is beyond me. I had the cushiest job. But I took people to lunch. And it was a lot about social stuff and just other odder things, right? Less the practical, like coding or something or animating. But with that, occasionally, you would find these things of like the first set of groups are like, oh, this person's awesome. And then you get to my lunch and I'm like, I just remember this one. I was like, wait, hang on. He was great at lunch, super like idea generative, talking all this stuff. But has he done anything? Has he done any of the things he said? He talks like he has, but all of a sudden I realize, and finds out he hadn't, right? And then all of a sudden, once you start tearing apart like actual, because everyone can be an idea person, right? But actual implementation is always way harder. But yeah, so I would introduce people to Valve to get hired like that. That would be, they get into the interview process, and I would think they're a great hire, and they wouldn't get hired. And I would just have to agree with the process because the process works, right? The end result is Valve makes a bunch of great stuff. Now you can complain that Valve isn't efficient, that they don't ship as many games as you want, that they're not working the thing you want. But the truth is, for the size of company they are super generative of output. It's crazy. It's crazy how much stuff comes out of it, especially back in my day of like, I mean, I shipped the Orange Box, Left 4 Dead 1, Left 4 Dead 2, Portal 2, like all in a row, right? Like we were shipping stuff all the time. And so you get that because you have those people in there, they have a sense of ownership and they could screw the ship up, right? And so again, you make it hard to hire. And that works. Because anybody could veto. Anybody could be like, no. And if you really, you could also do the other thing where you'd be like, I'm going to champion this person and I'm going to go talk with them. And like for the early days, I don't think this happens anymore, but the early days, like you always had to talk to Valve or Gabe at the end as well. And you could go to Gabe and be like, I want to champion this person. I understand their problems. I understand what this is, but here's why it's going to work out. And if you had a reasonable argument, you could do that as well, right? But it was always somebody who was part of that process, not the friend. Not the friend who would just be like, oh no, here's why. You could make the case the night beforehand, and I would be like, hey, you should hire this person, and here's why, right? And sometimes they got hired, sometimes they didn't. Again, no idea. But so for our company, we had a similar way of doing the interviews. But a problem with our company is, especially, so we got up to 20 people, is we had a hard time hiring. We're not Valve. Not everybody wants to come work at a startup. And especially at the time we were hiring when salaries were going crazy. I mean, Meta is offering people $1 million a year. I can't pay you $1 million. Like someone was literally like, whoa, look at you. I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. So, I mean, the whole game wasn't, we could pay one person, right? So it just wasn't the way to do it. Now, should we have just hired less people and taken longer? Maybe, I don't know, but that's always a risk and I like to ship. So that is where we come with the tension of we want to hire people, but equally, if one person in the interview process, we had everybody meet everybody in the company, and someone would be like, I don't like the vibe. I don't like this person. How they talk to me wasn't in a way that I want to work with somebody. And that is a reason not to hire a person, right? Because I'm protective of people. Once you join me, once you're in my Discord, once you join me in my company, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to be on your side. And I don't want somebody to cross that line. So I would rather err on the side of not hiring. And we didn't make errors of hiring because also we had a really diverse company working on the game. And that just really kind of happened naturally. And just wanted to make sure that everybody's always comfortable. And I'll tell you what, there is never a 10x game engineer that is worth it. There just never is. There never is. That person A doesn't really exist because you don't work in a silo. You're always working with a group of people and you need it. Occasionally you need somebody who's really, really, really smart who can come and do something really, really hard. Yes. But day in and day out, you need people who can work collaboratively. And that's what we had. We actually had some really, really, really smart people. Some people left really high paying jobs to come work on the Anacrusis. But so the problem we had is me. And that was, I get antsy and I'm like, oh my God, we should just hire this person. Oh, come on, we can ignore that. That's fine. And more level heads would have to be like, hey, here's why we shouldn't hire that person. But I go, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good point. The one thing we did that was a little different was we quickly said, everybody's life has the same value, so we should just pay everybody the same, because when we let people negotiate for salaries, the people who are nicer, softer, all were going to get paid less. And we did that without thinking. We did that without like even realizing it, and including the people who were helping decide how to do payroll and how much someone should get paid did the same thing to themselves. And then we just reflected and looked back at it. And it's just like, we should just give these people a raise and then normalize this and just say, you're in one of two buckets. This is what you get paid because everybody's life's important. And that's what we did. So with that, we shipped a game. I don't think people understand. We shipped a game in 2 years during a pandemic. That's insane. And we always knew we were going to ship it rough and then keep updating it. And that's what we've done. And that's why it's on sale right now today for 75% off. Pick it up now. Or not. I mean, I'm a bad salesman. I like the game though. And I can't believe we shipped it in 2 years during a pandemic, because that's insane. Look at all the other games that got delayed. We didn't get delayed. No siree, Bob. Oh, so that's Hiring is this weirdly weird black art because the success isn't hiring the person. The success is hiring the right person for your company. And so then the success really is the output of that hiring, right? And so then the question becomes, how do you judge success? I think Valve, you could judge success. For the Anacrusis and Stray Bombay, it's a little cloudier, and we'll see. We're still active, right? But I'm kind of curious, for people who've worked at other companies, what have you seen that really worked, that you said at the end of the day, wow, we hired great people. Not only were they nice and fun to work with and super supportive, but the output that we got was also amazing, and we created something incredible. Because I think the most successful way that I have seen people start companies is a group of people working in a place together leave and form a core where they know each other really well, and then tack on to that where they have that same, anybody's allowed to kind of keep that core safe. And I've seen that be successful. But so how, like, has anyone at a big company been like, man, Microsoft's hiring was awesome. That was the best experience I've ever had. I've seen other companies do really nice, thoughtful, hey, we do this through the interview process, and now we're going to bring you back, and you're going to talk with the people you're directly going to be working with, or directly with your supervisor, and have an extended session so you can just see how you work with and how that, like, all this is time consuming and costly, but it's also hiring the wrong person is even worse. So yeah, I'm kind of curious, just if people have gotten any ideas of how to do this better. I am always learning on this one, or places that they've had this experience. It's something I used to ask other companies a lot about when I'd go visit big giant studios. I'm like, how do you hire? And at some point for some of those companies, yeah, you're just warm bodies, especially when it got hard. Now, I don't know, it's different, right? So yeah. So let me know in the comments, as they say. Oh, and they also say like and subscribe. And I think they also say you should buy 10 copies of the Anacrusis.